The traits that built your empire are the same ones wrecking your body. You still think they're your strengths. Welcome back to Iron Suits, where strength wears a crown. I am your host, Marwan Killu. Let's talk about why success quietly makes high performance weaker. You build something, company, team, revenue, reputation. You did it through sheer force, through late nights and second efforts and refusing to quit when everyone else would have. And it worked until it didn't. Not in business, in your body. Because the same instincts that made you successful are now the exact things preventing you from getting in shape. And you haven't noticed yet. Because success doesn't expose weakness, it hides it. Let me show you what I mean. When you started your business, you probably didn't have a strategy. You had urgency. You had hunger. You moved fast. You worked harder than anyone else. And you figured it out as you went. That approach built momentum. It separated you from people who overthink and never start. But here's the problem. You never updated the operating system. You still treat your body the way you treated your first startup, like something you can brute force, like something that responds to intensity and volume and sheer determination. And a part of you already knows it's not working. Right? It doesn't, not anymore. Your body is not a startup. It's a mature system with compounding liabilities. And the traits that got you here are now generating friction you can't see. It's the one asset you can sell, rather, it's one asset you can't sell when it underperforms. So let's start with the first one. Bias towards action. You don't wait. You don't deliberate. You see a problem and you move. And that's why you win in business. But in training, it's why you break. Because action without precision is just noise. And noise accumulates as damage. You jump into a program, you go hard, you add volume because more feels like progress. You skip mobility work because it doesn't feel productive. There's no ROI, right? You train through soreness because stopping just feels like weakness. And for a few weeks, it works. Then your shoulders start clicking, your lower back tightens, your hip flexors scream every time you stand up from your desk. But you don't stop, you adjust, you push through. You tell yourself it's temporary, but it's not. It's structural because your bias towards action has taught you to prioritize momentum over mechanics. And mechanics don't care about your intentions. They care about alignment, about tension, about distribution, about whether your body can actually handle the loads you're placing on it. And right now it can't. Not because you're weak, because you never built the foundation. You skipped the boring part, the part disciplined men do when nobody's watching, that part that doesn't feel like winning. And now you're paying for it. You keep telling yourself you'll fix it once things calm down, but you know they won't. Nothing built on chaos ever suddenly becomes stable. Trait number two, not trait. not trait. High tolerance for discomfort. If you're wondering why I keep repeating myself, is because sometimes God, the captions don't capture what I was saying. Right, the SRT file becomes messy, and I have to go through like 20 minutes and and correct everything. Anyway, I digress. So the second trait is high tolerance for discomfort. You can endure things that other people cannot. Long hours, high pressure, uncertainty. That's a superpower in business. It's a liability in training because you've trained yourself to override signals, to push through fatigue, to ignore the body when it whispers. And that works when the cost is temporary, when you can recover with a weekend off or a vacation. But training is cumulative. Every session adds to the ledger. And if you're constantly overriding your body's signals, you're not building resilience. You're just building debt. And the problem is you can't feel the debt accumulating. Not immediately, anyway. You feel strong, you feel capable, you finish the workout, you check the box. But underneath, your nervous system is redlining. Your cortisol is spiking, your joints are compensating, and your recovery is shallow. And you don't notice until something breaks. I can tell you that from experience. I've done way too many stupid things in training in my life that, I've spoken about in previous podcasts. And you can go back and listen to. So you don't notice until something breaks, like a pulled hamstring, a frozen shoulder, a back spasm that takes you out for like 3 weeks. And when it happens, you're confused because you didn't feel weak. You felt fine right up until you weren't. And that's the cost of high pain tolerance. It blinds you to degradation. You mistake endurance for health. You confuse output with sustainability. Survival isn't strength. And by the time you realize the difference, you're already injured. Trait number three, just to make sure the captions are right. Optimization bias. You don't just want results. You want the best results, the fastest path, the most efficient system. You read the studies, you track the metrics, you test the protocols. In business, because in business, that's how you scale. In training, it's how you stall. Because optimization assumes you have the basics handled. And you don't. You're trying to optimize a system that's fundamentally broken. You're adjusting variables that don't matter because the foundation is unstable. You're tweaking your macros when you can't squat with your knees without your knees caving in. You're experimenting with fasting windows when you haven't slept more than 6 hours in a month. You're cycling supplements when your training program has no progressive overload. It's like optimizing the paint color on the building with no structural integrity. And the worst part is optimization feels productive. It feels like control, but it's not control. It's distraction. You already know which habits are the problem. You just keep hoping there's a workaround. Because real progress doesn't come from finding the perfect protocol. It comes from doing the simple things consistently. And you hate that. Hey, as all high performers do. I get it because I was the same. I'm speaking from experience. If it's not hard, then it doesn't matter. You hate simplicity because simple exposes whether you're actually disciplined. You hate repetitions. You hate the idea that the answer might be boring. So you keep searching, you keep optimizing, you keep switching programs every 6 weeks because you convince yourself there's a better way. There isn't. There's just the way. And it's slower than you want, and it requires patience you don't have. Trait number 4, comfort with volatility. You thrive in chaos. You can make decisions under pressure. You can pivot when conditions change. And that's why you survive when other businesses don't. But your body doesn't thrive in chaos. It thrives in rhythm, sleep rhythm, meal rhythm, training rhythm. And right now, you have none of that. Your schedule is reactive, and reactive men don't look powerful. They look overwhelmed. You eat when you can, you train when you have time, you sleep when the day is done. And you tell yourself that's how it is. That stability is a luxury that you can't afford right now. But here's the truth. Your body interprets volatility as threat. And under threat, it doesn't build. It protects. It holds on to fat. It downregulates testosterone. It prioritizes survival over adaptation. So no matter how hard you train, you don't see results because your body is constantly in crisis mode. And in crisis mode, it doesn't care about your abs. It cares about keeping you alive. And the more volatile your environment, the more that your body resists change. Not because you're not working hard enough, but because you're not stable enough. Trait number 5, identity through production. You are what you produce. That's how you measure yourself. That's how you know you're winning. More deals, more revenue, more output. And when production stops, you feel like you're losing. So you apply the same logic to training. You measure yourself by output, by volume, by how much you can do. You track workouts per week, sets per session, hours in the gym. And when those numbers go up, you feel successful, even if your body looks the same, even if you're more tired, even if you're not actually getting stronger. Because the metric isn't progress, it's production. And production makes you feel like you're in control. But training isn't production, it's adaptation. And adaptation requires space. Space to recover, space to rebuild, space to let the stimulus turn into structure. And you don't give yourself that space because space feels like stagnation. So you keep producing, you keep adding volume, you keep checking the boxes, and your body stops responding. Because, well, not because the program is wrong, because the approach is. You're treating your body like a factory, and factories don't grow, they wear out. You started avoiding the mirror in your own bathroom. Not consciously, just less often. Here's what all of this adds up to. You spent years building a business by ignoring constraints. by overriding limits, by forcing outcomes through sheer will. And it worked because business is flexible, because markets adapt, because you can hire people and delegate tasks and scale infrastructure. But your body isn't flexible, not flexible in terms of muscles. It's biological. It has rules. And those rules don't bend because you are disciplined. Okay? Like you can't outsource your discipline, your body to your PA. Okay? Effort without alignment just creates injury. Let me say that again. Effort without alignment creates injury. Intensity without recovery creates burnout. Optimization without foundation creates confusion. Volatility without rhythm creates resistance. Production without adaptation creates stagnation. And none of that is your fault. You didn't know. You were doing what worked everywhere else. And now you do know. And the question is whether you're willing to unlearn it. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. The version of you that built your business can't build your body. That version wins wars, but it loses longevity. That version is too reactive, too aggressive, too impatient. You need a different version. One that doesn't equate effort with progress. One that doesn't mistake intensity for effectiveness. One that can tolerate simplicity without feeling like it's wasting time. And that version doesn't come from trying harder. It comes from thinking differently, from treating your body like a system that needs precision, not pressure, from understanding that rules that govern muscle metabolism are indifferent to your work ethic, from accepting that you can't force this, you can only facilitate it. And that's the shift. Not working harder, not optimizing faster, not grinding more, just recognizing that the traits that made you successful are context dependent. They worked in one domain, they don't work in this one. And if you keep applying them, you'll keep getting the same result. Effort without outcome, discipline without progress, control without change. So the question isn't whether you're disciplined enough, it's whether you're willing to be disciplined differently, to build a body the way you build a second business, not with a scrappy urgency of the first one, but with the strategic clarity of someone who knows what matters. Less noise, more signal. Less production, more adaptation. Less forcing, more facilitating. That's the work. Not the training itself, the unlearning. And it's harder than you think because it requires you to admit that what got you here will not, won't, well, start again. It requires you to admit that what got you here won't get you there. It reminds me of a book that I keep talking about by Dan Kennedy. It's called, I believe it's Dan Kennedy. Let me just double check on Amazon. The skills that got you into Egypt aren't the skills that will take you to the promised land. Skills that got you to Egypt. Is that the one? No. No, let's check Google. The skills that got you into Egypt. Let's check over that. The skills that got you into Egypt. Here we are. The skills that got you into Egypt won't take you to the promised land. That was by Dan Sullivan. What was the name of the book? I'm pretty sure I have the book somewhere, but I can't quite remember. Anyway, we got that one right. Okay. So, yeah, it requires you to admit that what got you here won't get you there. And like Dan Sullivan says, the skills that got you into Egypt are not the skills that will take you to the promised land. Okay. And that's not a comfortable thing to, where are we? That's not a comfortable thing to sit with. Okay. It's not comfortable to admit that these skills are not going to take you there. And again, I'm speaking from experience. Okay. I've done that way too many times. I could keep saying, go back and listen to the previous episodes where I talk about all the different stuff that I did, and you'll just think, gosh, this guy was like, you know, it's so much like me. It's like stupidity. Anyway, so the traits that built your business are now working against you, not because they're bad, because they're misapplied. And if you want different results, you need a different operating system. Not a harder one, a smarter one. And that's all I've got for you today. I hope this episode was useful. If it was, make sure you share it with another leader. As iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. Make sure you leave me a review on iTunes. Hey, tell me how awesome my podcast is or how shit it was. Either way, I'd love to hear from you. No, I'm joking. Leave me a positive review if you like, if you find it really helpful. Follow me on my socials. I am on Facebook under Marwan Killu, MarwanKillu. And just copy that. Just copy where it says Iron Seuss, Marwan Killu. Just copy that into Facebook. Or you can find me on LinkedIn under Marwan Killu Fitness. You can watch this podcast on YouTube if you like, under Marwan Killu. And finally, make sure you subscribe so that you get notifications when a new episode goes live. All right. And I'll see you on the next episode. Have a great day.